Picture this. It's late at night. Your room is dark except for the faint glow of your phone screen. And that familiar knot of anxiety is tightening in your chest as your brain runs through every worst-case scenario like a highlight reel of financial doom. One unexpected bill, one broken appliance, one missed paycheck, and suddenly your entire world feels like it's hanging by a thread. This is the silent exhaustion most people live with without ever naming it. It's not about being bad with money. It's about being stuck in permanent survival mode, where even the smallest expense feels like an attack. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button to join the community at Nexo Invest, where we don't just talk about numbers. We dissect the mindset, psychology, and everyday strategies that turn ordinary earners into confident wealth builders. Because your financial story deserves more than constant panic. It deserves a plan. Most people don't realize they're in survival mode until their entire day revolves around avoiding financial damage. You wake up already on defense. Did that payment go through? Will I have enough for rent? Should I cancel that outing? Your brain is locked in a continuous cost-benefit analysis that drains your energy before you even start your morning coffee. Living paycheck to paycheck isn't just a budgeting problem. It's a neurological one. Your body stays in a low-grade fight-or-flight response, constantly scanning for financial threats. Neuroscientists study this under chronic stress behavior. But anyone who's ever stared at an overdraft notice already knows the symptoms by heart, impatience, poor sleep, and decision fatigue. The worst part? You start mistaking financial chaos for normal life. You get used to counting coins at a gas station, delaying medical checkups, and feeling your heart race every time you open your banking app. That's not laziness. That's survival condition. Breaking point doesn't always arrive in dramatic fashion. Sometimes it's simply the day you realize you can't keep living like this. You're tired of the panic after every purchase, tired of apologizing to yourself for never feeling caught up. That moment, that quiet decision to stop merely surviving, is where the psychology of real savings begins. People often think saving money is about math, but in truth, it starts with identity. When you decide you're done being the person who's always one emergency away from collapse, you're creating a psychological pivot. It's the first time you act, not out of fear, but out of dignity. In the early stages, even saving a few $100s feels like rebellion. You're telling the universe, I control what happens next. But here's where the irony hits. The more you struggle to stretch every dollar, the less energy you have to plan beyond next week. You can only think strategically when you're calm, and calm is impossible when your brain is wired for crisis. That's why people who finally reach their first cushion, those first few $1,000s, often describe it as a physical release. They sleep deeper, breathe slower, and suddenly notice details about their future they couldn't see before. That small buffer doesn't just buy safety, it buys perspective. You stop asking, how do I survive this week? And start asking, how do I build something better? And that mental shift becomes the foundation for everything bigger. $10,000, $25,000, and eventually $50,000. Reaching that first stability point doesn't magically make life easy. The bills still come, cars still break, laptops still malfunction. But the difference is that you're no longer playing a game you can't win. You move from reacting to creating. You start budgeting like an architect instead of a firefighter. You're able to breathe between paychecks, to choose convenience instead of necessity, and to make financial decisions based on logic rather than panic. Imagine standing in a grocery store without mentally calculating if switching from brand cereal to generic will save dinner plan. Imagine waking up on payday and knowing that you could lose your job today and still be fine for months. That peace isn't luxury. It's leverage. The truth most schools and workplaces never tell you is that survival mode quietly kills progress. It narrows your field of vision until all you can see is immediate danger. But once you take those first decisive steps to build savings, the view widens. Possibility re-enters the picture. You start catching opportunities because you have the capacity to look up from the ground. That's why hitting your first real savings milestone isn't about bragging rights. It's about reclaiming bandwidth, confidence, and control. The moment you decide you've had enough of financial firefighting is the exact moment you start rewriting your story. And every dollar saved afterward is proof that you've crossed the line from the chaos of survival into the quiet power of strategy. Imagine standing at the edge of your tiny apartment balcony at 2 a.m., a half-empty cup of cold coffee on the railing, and that same burning question bouncing around your skull. Will anything ever change? You've worked, hustled, budgeted, begged your brain to stop counting bills in your sleep, and yet progress feels microscopic. But here's the twist hardly anyone talks about. Getting to your first $10,000 isn't just about scraping your way out of scarcity. It's about rewiring your entire relationship with effort, patience, and possibility. The climb from 0 to 10 grand teaches you discipline, the unsexy, relentless kind that doesn't need inspiration, only routine. And that next 40,000, that's where things turn visionary. Before we dive into what separates scrappy saving from strategic wealth building, hit that subscribe button for Nexo Invest, the corner of the internet where money meets mindset. Around here, we don't chase get-rich-quick schemes. We build calm, confident long-term thinkers who turn consistency into freedom. Most financial journeys die in the first few $1,000s because discipline doesn't come naturally. It's forged under pressure. When you're clawing your way to your first $10,000, you're constantly negotiating with yourself. Do I really need this? Can I make it one more week without that? It feels small, tedious, like grinding gears uphill in the dark. But that's the hidden curriculum of wealth. Those early sacrifices, packing lunch instead of delivery, saying no when you could say yes, aren't punishment. They're training. Each small choice builds self-respect. And that's the emotional backbone of every future financial decision. The person who saves $10,000 doesn't just have cash. They've built patience, precision, and proof that delayed gratification actually worked. Then something fascinating happens after that first big milestone. You wake up one day and realize saving no longer feels like deprivation, it feels like empowerment. The anxiety that drove you at the start gets replaced with quiet confidence. You begin to see money not as something to guard, but as something to deploy. That mental shift is subtle but seismic. The next $40,000 isn't earned through tighter fists. It's earned through wider vision. You stop just saving and start strategizing. You're no longer hoarding to avoid disaster. You're planning to create opportunity. Maybe that means exploring low-risk investments, upgrading your skills, or building a small business fund. The habits you built climbing to $10,000 become the tools that now expand your horizon. This is where psychology takes the driver's seat. Once your emergency fund crosses into comfort, your brain chemistry literally changes. Cortisol, the stress hormone, stops dominating your decisions, and dopamine begins to take the stage. Start feeling reward, not fear. When you think about your finances, this doesn't mean you start spending wildly. It means you finally have the mental bandwidth for creativity. Opportunities you once ignored, like a new job, a side hustle, or a course, suddenly look achievable. You think longer term because you can afford to. That's what the jump from discipline to vision looks like. Less panic, more planning. And that mindset expands far beyond your bank account. Confidence of financial stability seeps into your posture, your tone, your conversation. You negotiate raises differently because you're not desperately clutching at security. You set boundaries in relationships because you've proven you can take care of yourself. Ironically, once you stop treating money like an emergency, it starts showing up as an ally. Those who climb from $10,000 to $50,000 understand this instinctively. The dollars themselves aren't life-changing. The perspective is. You realize that money is less about what you can buy and more about what you can choose. Now, here's the part nobody tells you. The journey from discipline to vision doesn't feel like firework. It's quiet. It's the calm drive home from work, knowing rent's paid, the relief of swiping your card without dread, the awareness that your future self is safe because your present self showed up. That's what the climb is. An emotional metamorphosis disguised as a financial milestone. First $10,000 proves you can handle effort. The next $40,000 proves you can handle freedom. So, if you're still in that grind phase, counting every dollar, stay patient. You're not just saving money. You're building the version of yourself who will one day look back and realize that the uphill battle wasn't punishment. It was preparation for everything extraordinary ahead. Picture this. You're sitting in your car outside work, engine off, hands on the steering wheel, and for the first time in what feels like forever, you're not panicking about gas prices or rent due dates. There's a strange new feeling hovering between your ribs. Calm. Not complacency, but the certainty that you're safe. Because now, for the first time in your adult life, you have more than enough. $50,000 sitting in your account. It's not billionaire money, not even retire on a beach money, but it's the kind of security that flips your internal script completely. Before we unpack what happens when money stops being your shield and starts becoming your sword, make sure you subscribe to Nexo Invest, the channel where we turn financial calm into lasting confidence. We don't glorify hustle burnout culture. We teach the psychology of smart moves, the science of compounding sanity. Because true wealth is a state of mind long before it's a number on a screen. Up until now, money's primary job in your life has been protection. Protection from overdraft fees, from broken transmissions, from job layoffs. You hoarded every dollar like armor, terrified of that one unpredictable hit that could undo months of effort. It's an understandable instinct, especially if you've lived through the chaos of zero savings. But something fascinating happens once your bank balance moves from barely surviving to comfortably covered. Your relationship with risk evolves. Suddenly, risk isn't an enemy. It's a potential ally. You start realizing that financial safety doesn't mean hiding. It means having the bandwidth to act from strength instead of fear. You no longer ask, what if I lose it? But what could this unlock? That's the pivot, the psychological moment where money stops being a panic button and becomes your permission slip to play offense. At this stage, protecting your cash isn't the priority. Directing it is. When you've built a sturdy emergency fund, opportunities stop feeling like threats. A friend mentions a promising course that could boost your income. You don't recoil at the $800 price tag, you weigh the return. A small business idea stirs in your mind. Instead of brushing it off, you run numbers over coffee because now you actually can. You're no longer controlled by scarcity logic. You're starting to think with investor logic, evaluating, prioritizing, positioning. And here's where power quietly enters the chat. Not the flashy type that buys yachts, but the inner power of choice. Financial choice is freedom disguised as numbers. Once you taste it, it's impossible to go back. Neuroscientists explain this transition beautifully. When people feel financially secure, their prefrontal cortex, the rational, planning part of the brain, lights up more consistently. Your creativity improves, your patience lengthens, and your problem solving becomes sharper. This is why people with savings seem luckier. They're not luckier. They're calmer, and calm brains spot more possibilities. At $50,000, your money isn't static. It's kinetic potential. It's leverage. The person who once obsessed over shrinking bills now spends energy mapping growth. That shift from defense to offense doesn't just transform your account balances. It reshapes your confidence, your identity, and your future trajectory. Let's get real though. Power can be quiet. It's the confidence of saying no to a toxic job offer because you know you can float for months. It's walking into negotiations knowing desperation isn't sitting on your shoulder, whispering take whatever they give you. It's realizing that your decisions aren't reactive. They're strategic. You're no longer hustling just to stop drowning. You're swimming toward chosen destinations. Financial calm translates into personal clarity. You build filters, which opportunities match your values, which risks are worth the bet, which voices actually deserve your energy. And that filtering power, born from savings, backed by self-trust, is the very definition of wealth. Here's the kicker. When money becomes power, it doesn't make you careless. It makes you courageous. Because courage, stripped down, is simply freedom from desperate consequences. You can be bold precisely because you've built the buffer to absorb failure. The same $50,000 that once felt like defensive armor now becomes your launch pad for expansion. You might invest part of it, test an idea, or simply allow yourself to breathe. And in that breathing space, creativity thrives. The moment you realize your savings aren't just there to protect you from life, but to propel you through it, everything changes. That's the pivot. That's the line between surviving your circumstances and directing them. When your money starts working with you instead of for your fear, you've officially crossed into power territory, and there's no turning back. Picture this. Your alarm goes off. Sunlight filters through the curtains. And for once, your first thought isn't about overdue bills or balancing your account before work. You stretch, make coffee, and actually taste it instead of gulping through stress. That's the moment no spreadsheet can measure, when calm quietly replaces panic. It's not about hitting the lottery or quitting your job to live on a beach. It's about reaching that place where money no longer whispers threats in the back of your mind. That's the ripple effect of real financial security. And before we dive in, hit that subscribe button to join Nexo Invest, the space where personal finance meets psychology. Around here, we study how wealth actually feels, how confidence compounds faster than interest, and how peace of mind is the first real dividend your savings ever pay. What happens after you've saved $50,000 isn't loud. There's no confetti, no movie soundtrack swelling in the background. Yet beneath that still surface, everything begins to shift. Just change your bank balance. It silently upgrades your entire operating system. Financial calm seeps into every decision you make, often in ways you don't notice until later. You sleep deeper. You speak slower. You negotiate differently. The world hasn't changed. You have. Because now, for the first time, your choices are driven by intention instead of fear. The ripple effect begins with one deceptively simple thought: I'm okay. Once that belief roots itself, confidence follows. And from that confidence, whole worlds unfold. Let's start with confidence. The quiet, grounded kind that doesn't need to shout. When your savings cross that line of genuine security, you start carrying yourself differently. You no longer walk into job interviews hoping someone will give you a chance. You interview them back. You don't chase every extra shift or gig out of panic. You choose the ones that align with your goals. That subtle change in attitude makes people respond to you differently, which often leads to better opportunities purely because you're operating from abundance, not desperation. The irony is almost poetic. The moment you stop needing money urgently is often the moment you start earning more of it. Then comes the second ripple: options. Money, at its essence, is optionality distilled into numbers. Before you had savings, you were trapped in reaction loops. Job loss meant panic. Broken car meant debt. Invitation meant guilt. Now, your toxic workplace suddenly looks temporary instead of permanent. Relocating to a city that excites you stops feeling impossible. You begin exploring, experimenting, investing, not recklessly, but curiously. Freedom doesn't always look like luxury. Sometimes it's just having 3 job opportunities on the table instead of clinging to one. And then there's the invisible third ripple, the silent upgrade. This is where the transformation goes beyond dollars. With money worries quieted, mental clarity blooms. You start reading again, thinking again, imagining again. You notice beauty in ordinary moments because your brain isn't hijacked by financial survival alerts. Relationships often heal here too. It turns out arguing over bills or avoiding social outings wasn't really about incompatibility, it was about exhaustion. Financial stability restores emotional generosity. You show up for others without resentment because your own foundation finally feels solid. What's most fascinating is how this new state of mind multiplies itself. The self-trust you gain from saving $50,000 becomes fuel for every other kind of growth. You're more likely to pursue professional development because you believe in delayed rewards. You're more open to long-term investments because you no longer crave instant wins. Every area, from health to creativity to love, gets an upgrade because your mind isn't spending all its energy fighting imaginary fires. That's why the ripple effect isn't linear. It's exponential. Each steady decision, each mindful purchase, each cautious no you've made along the way continues to echo outward, compounding confidence far beyond your total balance. The beauty of reaching this level isn't in what you can buy, but what you no longer have to fear. Power, choice, and peace stop being inspirational buzzwords and become your new baseline. Solid. What's most fascinating is how this new state of mind multiplies itself. The self-trust you gain from saving $50,000 becomes fuel for every other kind of growth. You're more likely to pursue professional development because you believe in delayed rewards. You're more open to long-term investments because you no longer crave instant wins. Every area, from health to creativity to love, gets an upgrade because your mind isn't spending all its energy fighting imaginary fires. That's why the ripple effect isn't linear. It's exponential. Each steady decision, each mindful purchase, each cautious no you've made along the way continues to echo outward, compounding confidence far beyond your total balance. The beauty of reaching this level isn't in what you can buy, but what you no longer have to fear. Power, choice, and peace stop being inspirational buzzwords, and become your new baseline. So if you're somewhere on the path, maybe just climbing your first few thousand, remember what awaits beyond the numbers. The ripple effect is real. Savings don't just protect you, they evolve you. They turn chaos into clarity, scarcity into strategy. Picture this: you're sitting at your desk late at night, a soft glow from your laptop illuminating a spreadsheet that finally doesn't look terrifying. For once, the numbers make sense. You're not calculating how to survive the month, you're calculating how to grow. You look at that $50,000 sitting safely in your account and feel something you never expected: quiet confidence. It's not adrenaline, it's clarity. Because this isn't the finish line, it's the foundation. Before we break down how mindset turns this into lifelong freedom, hit subscribe and join Nexo Invest, where money and psychology meet. This is where we replace financial anxiety with strategy, where we turn small, consistent decisions into a calm, compounding kind of wealth, the kind that builds while you sleep. Reaching $50,000 feels incredible, but here's the secret: it's not about the money. It's about who you became on the way. You learn discipline from saving your first $10,000, patience from hitting $25,000, and emotional control by pushing through to $50,000. Those lessons are the real assets, the digits are just evidence. But at this milestone, many people hit a strange kind of crossroads. They've built security, yet they feel uncertain about what's next. They've conquered reaction mode, but now a quiet question lingers: how do I make this money work for me without losing the freedom I've built? That's the mindset shift of the long game. The point where wealth stops being about accumulation and starts being about alignment. The first rule of the long game: protect peace over profit. The goal isn't to double your money overnight. It's to make decisions that keep you free. The same patience that got you here now becomes your superpower. You focus less on chasing wild gains and more on building systems that outlast mood swings and market dips. You start automating savings, diversifying investments, and understanding compound growth not as a math problem, but as a lifestyle rhythm. The wealthiest people aren't the ones with the highest income. They're the ones who stay consistent when excitement fades. That discipline is what keeps your $50,000 from shrinking and quietly helps it multiply. Here's what financial freedom actually looks like. It's the space to choose. It's waking up and knowing you can take a creative risk, explore a new career path, or take a month to rest because your finances support your decisions, not control them. The long game is about designing a life that compounds choice just as elegantly as your investments compound interest. And that starts with perspective. You stop asking, how much can I earn? And start asking, how long can my money work for me? This mental switch transforms you from a saver into an investor, someone who plays decades ahead, not paychecks behind. The other rule of the long game is emotional steadiness. You learn to ignore the noise, the headlines screaming about recessions or the social posts flaunting luxury lifestyles that drain instead of build. You understand that real progress often looks boring: steady contributions, reinvested earnings, patient observation. You realize that financial calm is the real luxury in a noisy world. Every smart decision now buys you time later, time to think, to learn, to live. That's the compound effect nobody talks about. Money grows, but more importantly, you grow. As your mindset matures, you start to notice how wealth interacts with every part of your identity. You negotiate differently because you value time over titles. You stop competing with others and start collaborating because scarcity has left your vocabulary. The person who used to flinch at unexpected expenses now treats challenges as strategy puzzles. That's freedom, and it's being built quietly every day you commit to thinking long term. Here's the truth: $50,000 isn't the dream, it's the doorway. What comes next depends entirely on whether you treat that doorway as a checkpoint or a launch pad. The long game rewards patience, curiosity, and humility. You won't always see instant results, but you'll feel a steady expansion of options, confidence, and peace. Keep your eyes on the far horizon, because financial freedom isn't a destination carved in stone. It's a mindset practiced over time. You've already proven you can earn it. Now the goal is to sustain it slowly, deliberately, and with the kind of grace that makes the next chapter of your story not just richer, but wiser.